Welcome to Nkosi Talk Shows. Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice.
The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow.
Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Let the world hear your voice and be filled within.
For the day has come for you to be a great leader.
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable.
Find your own voice. Welcome to Nkosi Talk Shows, Lead from Within. Over to you, Carol Ann. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, and good afternoon from London, UK. And as the writing facilitator, what I do is I support soul-driven entrepreneurs in becoming more productive with their writing by connecting them with their deeper innate ability to write. But more importantly, they experience free-flowing writing. They experience an unlocking of the writer within and getting their book written, getting their story written, because you cannot publish what isn't written. And all of this has come about through my own journey of unlocking the writer within. So I'm Carol Ann, the writing facilitator, helping you unlock the writer within. So thank you, Nomsa.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carol Ann. So our topic today is how much are you in control of yourself or your behavior, which is at this moment, I'm trying to control myself. I'm trying to control myself. So, sometimes you can go to this illusion where you can feel trapped by your own emotions, or you can feel trapped by social media, going through difficult times. So I'm going to hand it over to Carol Ann. What do you think about the topic?
I love the topic. When you suggested that, it's like, what a great topic to explore. Because as you say, sometimes people feel trapped by their emotions and they don't know how to deal with them. They feel like everything's going out of control. And there's a trying to control the situation. Well, in just using that word itself, there's an element of failure, because you either are controlling it or you're not. There is no try. And the best way to actually feel in control is just maybe stop for a moment and breathe and recognize any negative thoughts that might be going on in your head. Recognize the emotion that's going on. Maybe there's some concerns, but just breathe into them. And then bring yourself back into the moment and say, right, well, what can I do right now? And in that moment, you are taking control. Because when you feel like you're out of control, it's like you feel like you don't know what to do. So it is just bringing yourself back to the moment, asking that question, what can I do? And then take the action. And then what else can I do? And take the action. And from there, things can then open up. But there are a lot of other factors that are involved with our behavior as well, and how we react or respond. So yes, I was really intrigued and welcomed this topic today. So how are you feeling now, Nonsa? Is there still a try going on, or is there?
I'm trying to control my emotions. I think that's what I always do. I spend most of my time trying to control my emotions, because sometimes, there are things that we can't control. And I seem to be like, I don't know, one day I I transferred money into, I think that was last month, I transferred money into an account that I've used before, and which was the wrong account where I wanted to transfer the money from. And the money went into that account. I never got it back. I asked the bank if they can chase the money, because what happens is the bank can request the money to be sent back. So you'll be the other person at the other end. Like if the money has been deposited by mistakes to my bank account, it's up to me whether I want to return that money. That's how it works apparently. So the bank did request that the other person return the money, and the money wasn't returned. But what happened is, for the first time, I'm not sure whose bank account it is, but when I tried to actually deposit the money, I didn't put the name for the first time. So it's got my name on it. So I thought I was depositing the money into my bank account. So I thought I was actually transferring the money into my account, but it went to somebody else. And that somebody else will not return my money. So I seem to be facing the circle. So I'm trying to control myself. So those are the kind of things that you can't control them. Like I spoke to the bank, and the banker was like, we are going to contact the other person, the other end. If they say they're going to return the money, will be up to them. So today I have not received that money back. And like my daughter was telling you this story about my daughter, that I've lost my card. So I was being honest to the bank. I was, listen, I've lost my card, and my daughter got a hold of my phone. There are things that have been bought my card, but I managed to cancel my card. But I'm not sure whether it was my daughter who pressed things by mistakes, or it was because of I lost the card. And the woman just went, just because you're just saying your daughter, we're not gonna solve the problem, because it was like, I'm being honest. So I don't know. It's like I'm being honest, because I know she had my phone, and the bank were like, we are not being on. We are like, we're not gonna sort it out. But Santander, I think I'm gonna cancel all these banks. Santander, they are really, really good. They, if anything happens to the bank account, they are really, really good in returning the funds back to your account. But other banks, they don't.
No, gosh.
We there was a time where I think we lost about 10,000. My ex did transfer the money to somebody else by mistake. The money just went just like that, with their face directed, £10,000, just like that.
Gosh.
Yeah, because they have,
yes.
the bank have a policy that the other person has to return the money if you do the security checks and everything. So it will be the other end, the other person, the other end, that they need to have courage to say, this is not my money, I'm gonna return it.
And you have no other recourse to getting the funds back or making them return the money?
Nope. The bank can only request from the other bank.
Yeah.
So they will request the fund to be returned, and then the other bank will write to, or let the other person know that the funds has to be returned back. So it will be then the other person to agree, the owner of the account agree to return the money.
Gosh.
Yeah, so it's kind of complicated.
Yeah. And I should imagine there's a lot of emotional turmoil in there and fear.
I know.
I don't know about you, but maybe there are fear that, it's gone, the money's gone. How do I get this back?
I think it's sometimes,
what's there?
I think sometimes it is something that it depends, like what you say, we're talking about controlling yourself and controlling your behavior. It depends with the behavior of the person. Like myself, if I was to find something that does not belong to me, I want to return it to his rightful owner, because I'm controlling myself. Money is tempting, so I have to control myself to say this is not my property, and then return that property to the rightful owner. That is controlling your behavior and saying this does not belong to me, and I'm gonna be a champion, because you don't know what the other person are going through. So that's what is happening. My daughter, or the reason is because I lost my card, but I'm suspecting it might be my daughter, because she likes, when she goes on YouTube, she likes playing likes. She likes liking other people's posts. And I don't know whether she liked it and pressed it memberships. I don't know.
Oh
So I have
gosh.
lots of membership that I've joined, that I'm like, and I was trying to speak to the bank, and I was like, I don't think a normal person will be. There are some things that are not normal. There are some
Yeah,
things that are normal. So
yeah, yeah. And I think that's how, from that comes the, again, it's about bringing the moment. The only way you can control what's going on is literally being in the moment. And I'm always telling my grandson, there's no such thing as an accident. Because he often goes, oh, it was an accident. I said, no. You weren't present in the moment.
yeah,
And therefore, this is what happened. You weren't mindful in the moment. Your mind was elsewhere, and this is what happened. And although he doesn't like me saying it, he started getting used to it, but it is a case of, well, where was your mind in that moment? And I think sometimes that's where our emotion goes a bit like, oh gosh, I did this, I pressed the wrong button. So we can be sort of angry at ourselves and upset. And again, it's recognizing those emotions that don't really serve you in that moment. And yeah, okay, be angry yourself with it for a moment, be upset, and recognize, what were you thinking at that moment that you pressed that button, or that what has happened, that had the outcome that you didn't want. Because there will be an element of, you weren't present in the moment. And that is the only thing that you can control, and once you're in control of that, and that takes some work, and that is about doing the inner work. It is about constantly being present and recognizing when you're going off or you're distracted, and bringing yourself back into the moment. And but yeah, where do you then go from there? And I know it can be difficult to respond. There can be a reaction, and a lot of people react, and then you're blaming and creating havoc or whatever. It's like this comes out. It's like shung. So it's also recognizing that we have reflexes that do control us, and if they're not fully integrated, then in that sort of stressful time, they immediately take over, and they're reside in the brainstem, and they're like, if you've got like a computer, it has pre-programs to set it up, and once the setup is done and they've done their job, they then stop, and other programs take over to help with the running of the computer. Well, that's the same with us. We have these reflexes, primitive reflexes, that are designed to help us in the first few years to be born, and in the first year or two of life. And once they've done their job, then they're supposed to be fully integrated, and other reflexes take over. So, for example, there's what's called the Morrow Reflex, which is the fight or flight. And that one is literally, boom, anger just comes out of nowhere, literally. And it's huge energy. And you go, whoa, where does this come from? And it's because that reflex has literally taking hold. But once you've integrated that reflex, what happens is there's what's called the adult startle reflex takes over, in which you're sort of, there's an initial reaction and startle, but then you relax and you're then operating in the what's called the prefrontal cortex here. You're able to move from that initial emotion reaction to being able to respond appropriately, because you have access to logic and reasoning. And it's actually about being able to integrate those reflexes. And there's quite a few of the reflexes, and they also have a huge impact on your learning and your behavior. And when I learned about these, I realized, the impact that they do have. There's a book actually called A Teacher's Window into the Child's Mind by Sally Goddard. And she talks about the reflexes, and she said it's a non-invasive approach to solving learning and behavior problems. And she talks about the reflexes and then also about movements that you can do. I've actually done a course in educational kinesiology called Childhood Reflexes and Their Effect on Learning and Behavior by Claire Hocking, who is an educational kinesiologist. And that, when I did that course, that opened up a huge space for me of, I could feel, the more I integrated these reflexes, the more I could feel inner anger just dissipating. It didn't happen as quickly, So it's worth seeking out, have a look for that book, and maybe there are other courses about childhood reflexes, because actually Claire Hocking is in Australia. I was fortunate enough to go to Australia at the time and do her course, and then she came over here and I did it again, and I did her advanced training as well. But there are other people that now looking at reflexes, and it is something that is becoming more common knowledge and spoken about, and there are quite a few other trainings around. Because when I did this was 20 years ago, so it was quite new then, not really heard about, but that made a huge impact on my life, and also the way I was able to help other people as well, and help me to recognize what was going on for that person. So it is remembering that there are things within us that we don't have control of, that do control us, but we can do something about it. Do the inner work, and integrate that so that eventually it becomes easier. So you can respond instead of react. So I went around, brought a lot in there. What did you hear in all of that nonsense? What did you get?
I actually agree with you, because when you are in the present moment, like what you're saying, you will be looking, when it comes to your emotion and how you respond. You talk about how you respond as well. You want to respond based on assumptions. You respond based on the proof, wanting to investigate the truth about basically what triggers those emotions, and how you can control your emotions. It's like right now when I'm actually speaking to the bank, and the woman, she's assuming that because I'm mentioning my daughter and losing my card, that my daughter, okay, your daughter, she's responsible, but then I'm trying to explain to her that what if she's not? If somebody keep using my card, can you just cancel the card? Okay, I had to go to the app and cancel the card, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep my cool down. At the end of the day, it is money. I'm gonna keep cool down, explaining. I've written the book for Sally. I think the one that you just shown, I'm gonna get the book because it sounds very exciting, because everything basically it goes back to your childhood and your emotions, how you control your emotions and all these attachment as well. So I'm gonna go and get the book. It sounds very, very interesting. And sometimes when you can't control your emotions, what I do is sometimes if I'm faced with really, really challenges, because sometimes there are challenges that you can't control. You can only control the things that you can only control the things that you can't control. So sometimes when I'm faced with those challenges, like the things that I can't control, I have to remind myself of the things that I'm grateful for. And sometimes I have to remind myself, if I don't take good care of myself, what will be the consequences of me stressing myself? Because if I stress myself just because of the money can be sorted out, but my health, it can be damaged forever. So I have to basically take good care of myself, control my emotions, and have the strategies, write down the strategies of how am I going to do this, and position myself as, instead of making myself wrong, I'm a learner. I have to tell myself that at this moment, I'm a learner. I'm learning about this journey. I'm learning about these problems. Like right now, anytime my daughter gets a hold of my phone, I am gonna say, "Excuse me, no." I'm gonna just run and get my phone. So I'm learning. I have to position myself as the learner, and that helps me to actually control my emotions. It helps me to control my behavior. I know with my behavior, I know that I'm not a screaming and I'm not a shouting. I am somebody, I don't know whether I don't think it's because it's psychology. I was talking to one of the lenders the other day, and she was talking to me this, and then I was like, okay. And then I'm talking over the phone. So, and then I was like, I just saw that she was lying to me. So I was like, is it not because of this that's why you guys are refusing to do this? And she was like, oh no, 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 no. And then she tried to cut me off. So then I saw through what she was trying to do, what they were trying to do, basically. So I was like, uh digging, because sometimes when somebody is when you're solving something, somebody is like, people selling something can manipulate you to buy something. But then if you are somebody that sees through people, you just, it's up to you. So I saw through what she was trying to do, and then I was like, okay, instead of continuing with this conversation, let's go to the email. And she was like, why? I was like, everything that we speak is written down. It cannot go against me. It cannot go against you. We can go back to the email. If things go wrong, it's easy. You can go back to the email and write and go back and say, this is the agreement. So I cut the phone. I was like, I don't want to talk to you now. Let's go to the email. So I've emailed her and she emailed me back. So that's when you realize that sometimes people don't tell you the truth. And instead of me screaming and say, you are actually lying to me right now, I was like, do you mind if we go to the email? And she was like, okay, if that's what you want. I was like, yeah, let's go to the email. And we do the agreement by email. And so we both know where we stand. And sometimes you serve lots of time by screaming. When you control your emotions, when you control your behavior, it's not easy. I don't know, Carol Ann, with you, it's a habit that you have to practice all the time. It's like you have older kids, like you have grandchildren. When your grandchildren trying to manipulate you, you can see through you can see through it because you've had the kids before. So I see with my children as well. We were having conversation with my daughter the other day, saying my daughter was saying I can't go to the regatta because I'm 14, and there's no point in me wasting money and buying tickets. I can't. We can't go to cool stuff, but apparently, there are some places where we are not allowed to go. So when I'm able to drink, when I'm able to do that, when I'm 18, then I can go. I was like, listen, Hope, we've been there before. Don't tell me that when you are 18, I know you're going to drink it before you even turn 18 anyway. So I was like, we've done that before. I used to say to my parents, they'll go to sleep. And if I want to hang out with my friends, I jump through the windows and let them think I'm sleeping. So they'll be thinking I'm sleeping, but I'm not there. And then I come back and sleep, everything is fine. But I think I did it a few times and I was like, this is not working because I'm not a good liar. And my sister was like, then she stopped getting me involved because she was the oldest and she knew that I'm not a good liar, so I'm gonna dip them into it. So I was telling my daughter that we've done all this before, so don't even try to drink when you are just before you are first. You don't drink because everyone is drinking. So I was trying to explain to her that everything that you decide to do, it has to be your choice, not just because when you turn 18 you drink, or when you turn 16 you drink, or when you're supervised by parents you can drink when you're 14 or 15. So I said to her, it has to be a choice. You have to give yourself time to actually control yourself. And this behavior myself, it helped me a lot. That I look at people when they're doing things, then I look at my behavior. Is this me, or I'm just copying other people? It helped me a lot. I don't know about you.
Not sure. I think if you've had your own way of doing something, then yes, you're mindful of what somebody else is doing. But I think in terms of, they're going to drink when they're 18. My parents allowed us to have drink at home because their philosophy was, well, if you have it at home, then you're less likely to want to try it, before you're supposed to, sort of thing, or outside. And so we could have some at home, we could taste it. And I use the same philosophy with my own children. We let them have drink at home just now and again, but it meant that it wasn't a mystery to them. And then when they were old enough and went out, they've been sensible. Sometimes maybe they haven't, but they've been adults. They're grown up, and you trust that you've given them the common sense to understand the repercussions or the outcome of of what their actions are. And it is looking at being aware of consequences and being able to think forward. Well, if I do this, what's going to happen? And it says taking responsibility for your own actions. So yeah, but it is difficult when a child says, you said no to them, and then they throw a wobbly. It's like that in that moment, there's a test of your ability to be in control of your own emotions and your reaction, be able to respond rather than react. And it is difficult because it's like they touch a trigger in you. There's that reaction, there's that anger, and you can feel it, and you can feel it whoosh. If you're not careful, you react back. And something I've found that really helps is a brain gym activity, which is called hookups. And it's where you just put your hands out in front, thumbs to the floor, with that backs of the palms. Then put the palms together, interlink your fingers, and just roll under. And then you just cross your ankles, cross your feet at your ankles, and sit with that. And it helps you to feel the emotion, be with it, and then let it go. And I know there's been a few times when I've, been standing in hookups, and there's been a child who's been literally throwing a tantrum, and then they'll calm down and then they'll go off again. And I can feel that it lights a tinder, in you, as if you suddenly want to go back at them. But while you're in hookups, you feel it and then it goes. It actually allows you to not react. And so that is a really powerful activity to do. And because what happens is eventually the other person calms down. They stop throwing the temper tantrum. And then you can have a conversation with them. And then it all smooths out. And I know I used this at school when I was teaching and I was head of department. And a few times when I had students that were sent to me because they were out of control in their classroom and the teacher couldn't do anything with them, I'd sit them down and I'd sit them in hookups and just say, right, you sit there for a minute. And because there was no point talking to them. And then after a while, they'd calm down. And I could feel them calm down. And then eventually we were able to have a conversation and actually get to the what had happened and discuss, well, what was your part in this? What do you think you did that actually created the problem, or what would be a better solution for you? And then we were able to, work through it. And it made such a difference, so when I learned about this, it made a lot of difference to me being able to deal with children like this, rather than getting that, why are you doing that, and getting really angry with them, because it doesn't solve anything. You're both at loggerheads then, and neither of you are communicating, and then it becomes a control struggle. Who's going to be the most powerful and win this argument, and that solves nothing. And so if you can just diffuse that anger, and the most powerful is you diffusing it in yourself first, it ripples out. And that really is a powerful thing to be able to do. And the magic afterwards, when you can actually have a conversation with that child or that person and come to a place where you're then smiling, and laughing, and it's like, wow, yeah, it's a beautiful conversation and everybody's happy, and then you can move forward. So that is one technique that is worth taking on board. But it is, as you say, it's recognizing the trigger when you're triggered, because sometimes we're not aware of that trigger. It can take over so quickly, but it is being aware of that trigger and being able to then stop and go, okay, let me do something about that. And I know another technique that when you're sort of in the emotion yourself, if you're upset about something, so it doesn't actually necessarily involve someone else, but you're upset, there's Brandon Bay's The Journey, and she has a process, or two processes. There's an emotional journey and there's a physical journey. Now the emotional journey is a drop through the emotional layers, and it's about sitting with the emotion rather than fighting it, being with the emotion, going into the middle of it and letting yourself just drop through, seeing what's coming up, and then sit with that and be in the middle of it, in the core of it, and drop through until eventually you get to a place where there's peace, and it's a bit, it's calmer, It might take a few drop throughs, or it might, but it is being able to label that emotion, give it a name. And that's sometimes what we're not very good at. So again, it's our language. What's the word? Expand your vocabulary about emotions, so you can actually name them and be aware of where it is in your body, and then be with it. Because when you can be with the emotion, it's not taking over you. And again, that's a powerful place to be. So that's a start. And if you want any support in that, there are many journey practitioners around that could support you as well. And again, the more you work through an emotional journey, the more you get to know the emotions, the less you tend to react, because you then get to know the trigger, and it's like, oh, and you can pop out more quickly and respond. So yeah, just look around and find ways again of doing that inner work, and being aware of yourself. And that's how you can be in control. That's how you can control the situation.
Saying, Carol Ann, if you really want to control your emotions as well, you will need to actually stop seeking validation or approval from other people, because sometimes there are some people that they know exactly what they are feeling. They know the things that whatever you're doing with your inner being, it does not agree with what you're doing. But instead of stopping in that present moment, they're saying, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to allow my emotions do this. Some people will do things because they just want to fit in. And I used to do that with myself. 10 years ago, it doesn't work. You get more frustration as well. If you get to know your emotions, if you really get to know your emotion, that means you have to be authentic with your inner being. You have to live an authentic life, not trying to fit in with anybody else, not trying to seek approval from people. That works if basically you are being honest with yourself, and doing your inner work. It does really help what you are suggesting, Carol Ann, and managing your emotions and your beliefs as well. It does help, because our beliefs, basically, they are part of our emotions. What do we believe can actually take us to where we need to go, or it can destroy us as well. And checking your intuition as well, it does help when you want to control your emotions with whatever you feel about yourself. And the good thing is, once you practice all the time and you are aware, it's like myself, like now I know when my emotions want to take me to a place where I'm uncomfortable, where I feel that it's not me, or when I feel that I'm being dragged into do something that I don't want to do, or something that is not me, I have to stop and say no. So I've learned to do that, to stop myself, because it was sometimes, if I'm going to an argument with someone, I have to look at where does this person come from, and then stop that argument straight away and try to actually calm that person down. Because at the moment, we all have different emotions. Sometimes there could be a misunderstanding. So I am aware that if I'm being taken to this place, I just have to stop it and say, calm myself and calm the other person, Then we go back to where we began now, so we can understand each other, where we are going. So we end up having one agreement. I end up listening to them, and then they end up listening to what I have to say. I end up listening to what they have to say. And sometimes we work things out, or sometimes we don't. So it is. Yeah, you were saying?
Sorry, I think something key there. There's a key word that you've used, which is listening.
Yeah.
You're not just listening to yourself, but you're listening to the other person. And
Yeah.
that is really important, to listen. And knowing that listening isn't just about hearing, listening is actively hearing and really listening to what the other person is saying, and not trying to form an answer in your head at the same time. You are completely with them. And so yeah, that's a key activity, which again is very supportive. So that I just wanted to, I heard you use the word, and I just wanted to bring it out, because a lot of people don't listen. They don't know how to listen. So if you can practice listening, again, that brings you into the moment, and it takes you out of yourself, because you can then be with the other person, and you're less likely to be in your emotions because you're not hearing, in yourself. So yeah, it's a great point there. Listen.
Yeah, it's very, very important to actually listen, because if you don't, you're gonna end up being in a judgmental place, and no in a and that makes you uncomfortable. That makes the other people uncomfortable, or in a blaming place. So I've learned that before I would just say, oh, whatever. But I've trained myself for the habit to just listen, where this person is coming from. And sometimes it's like when I speak to people, like with the matchmaking introduction agents, some people, they have been hurt, and sometimes it's hard for them to it's hard to convince them to say no. Although you've been hurt, there are still some good people out there that are looking for the same thing that you are looking for. So you just have to, instead of manipulating, I just have to come to a place where that person finds the answer themselves, that although I've been through a lot, it's part of life. What have I learned out of this? And what am I willing to, how am I willing to go forward? What am I willing to do for me? Because sometimes you can enter a relationship, the signs are there that this relationship is meant to go further, and you choose to ignore it, which that used to be my story. I choose to ignore it and listen to my own whatever made up stories. And sometimes you go enter a relationship, you make a mistakes. Like myself, I used to make mistakes, but if instead of me acknowledging the mistakes, I would just blame the other person, because I don't know, because I can. So but then when I basically stepped back and said, I need to learn more about myself, learn more about the things, what I can change when I enter another relationship, with the things that I shouldn't repeat. So I've learned a lot about all these things, which is sometimes it makes me feel that I'm not normal anymore.
Yeah.
Honestly, it makes me feel that I'm not normal anymore, because I actually I look at things like, I'm like, this is what I used to do, and I don't do this anymore. And I look at things, and then I look at the other person, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do this, or I'm not gonna do this. Or if I want to do something, instead of getting angry for somebody to do it, I just get on with it and just do it. And I find that when you do things instead of upsetting and going and a wrestling match and say, why did you do this? When you do something and the other person, they contribute in different ways as well, without you realizing, because that awareness wasn't there before. It's like with my children, there's some things like pick up this, we tidy up, they mourn. I say hoover this, my 6-year-old to hoover the living room, and the other one do this. They start mourning at the first time. Then I leave them alone and I say, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then later on I say, anyone finish cooking now today? And my daughter will be like, she refused to hoover. She'll be like, okay, I'll go and check what is in the freezer. But before, I think I'll stay in the argument and say, you will do as I say, young lady. It is not helping. It doesn't help. So if you let them think they are winning the argument and then they come back, they end up contributing anyway. So I let them think they are winning the argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And then when they've forgotten, I go back and ask them to do something else that is completely different. So if I say hoover, she argues, I leave her alone. And I'll go back and say, I don't fancy cooking. Do you fancy cooking today? She'll be like, yep, I'm going to have a look what we can have for dinner.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
And then she'll go and do that.
Yeah, she'll go and do
then you
it.
get her to go back and do the hoovering.
No, I hoover.
Oh, you hoover.
I hoover.
Okay.
If she says no, mommy, that's too much hard work. I know I'm gonna get her. I use my psychology against them. I'll be like, okay,
do something else.
Yeah, she'll go and do something else.
Got it.
Yeah, they're contributing in different ways. Even if I ask her dad, do this, and he just moans, and I'll be like, okay. And then later on, I come back with a different. I'll have ideas that if he refuses this, he's gonna do this.
Yeah.
So then I leave him alone.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And I know I've had conversations with my grandchildren when I've asked them to do something, and they sort of maybe started sulking and because they don't want to. And I said, well, look, you can say no. There's 3 answers you've got. There's yes, no, and there's an alternative. Offer something else. Negotiate. Talk it through. Don't just sulk about it or refuse. It's just like, have a conversation. And it's getting to a point where, if there is something that you don't want to do, how can you negotiate out of it? And it then helps them to be responsible for their actions and knowing that there is something that they need to do, but they don't need to be forced to do something. They have a voice.
Yeah.
And but also helping them to realize that sometimes they need to contribute, and it's part of living together. Everybody needs to muck in, and so again, it's having the conversations, but it's ways of doing it, which is what I've sort of come to realize over the years. It as you say, didn't used to be like that. That's not how I was before. But again, through doing the inner work and finding yourself and finding a much calmer place, a much more rational, logical place, well, not so logical, but calmer, more in the moment place to be, things change, have changed completely. It's interesting you use the word, it's not normal. And I now understand what you mean. It's not what used to be normal for you, but what is normal anyway, It's only what you're used to in there. And so you've shifted out of that. And you've now got a new normal. And it works better for you, And this is really what it's looking at. Is this working for me or not? Is it healthy? Because you mentioned about health as well. Is this really healthy for me? Having all this anger and stress. And actually the answer is no. Whatever way you look at it. Being angry all the time, being stressed isn't healthy for you. You have a choice. And you can say, well, do I want to hang on to this or not? If you do, then recognize there'll be consequences with your health. If you do want to do something about it, then do something about it, you know. And I think sometimes our emotion and our anger and frustration comes down to not being able to express ourselves. It's like we feel it here, and yet we can't seem to find the words, and so the emotion gets more, the tears come, and you can feel the anger from the other person because they're not understanding where you're at. So again, this is where it helps to listen to someone else and realize where they're at. And when somebody is stressed and in an emotional state, they actually don't have access to language, and so they're not able to express themselves. So again, it's when you can calm the whole thing down, then you can have access to language. And it is encouraging yourself to express yourself. It's encouraging your children to be able to express themselves, say what is there for them, in a way that isn't blaming. You know, oh, you've made me feel like this, or you've done this to me. No. What? It's not me. It might be what I've said, or it might be what I've done. It is not me. You know, and I think that's the subtle difference. And this is where I said to my grandchildren sometimes when they say, "Oh, the teacher doesn't like me," and I'm going, no. It's not that they don't like you. They don't like your behavior.
Yep.
There's a difference. And when you can, take that difference apart and realize, then you could do something about it. But when you take it personally, you're trapped. That's where you're not in control. Where you can take control is not taking something personally, is actually divorcing it, taking it away from yourself, and realizing it's your behavior, what you said, but then being able to find words, be able to express yourself, and giving someone else time to express themselves and find out what it is that they're really, is really upsetting them, and what it is about what you did or said that upset them. Or conversely, you being able to say to the other person, well, this is what you said and this was the impact that it had on me. This is what you did and this was the impact it had on me and how I felt. Can you feel there's a difference in the whole dynamics, and it allows for the other person to then respond and for you to have a nice dance in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I've ever since I heard that phrase many moons ago, I just love it. And it is about dancing in the conversation, not
dancing in the conversation,
not butting heads and not trying to have control, and win an argument. It's about dancing in the conversation and allowing
it down.
Yes, do. So how can you dance in the conversation? Because dancing is a partnership.
Yeah.
One can lead and the other follows, and then the other can lead, the other follows, and it's a beautiful partnership. So yeah,
dancing in the conversation. That's a good part of because it takes two, right, to dance. So wow, so it takes two to solve the problem. If the other one is not listening, then you won't be able to solve the problem. So that's a good way of looking at things. It's a good way. I say these things sometimes. My daughter, they hold me against it. If you listen to my 6-year-old daughter, oh my goodness, she's like, you've hurt my feelings. So that means you have to see that, because I tell them then you need to explain if there's something you go to school or your friend they've hurt you, you need to explain instead of fighting, or instead of saying like what you're saying, the teacher doesn't, your grandson saying the teacher does not like me. My daughter does say that sometimes, but I do have to say to her, she's likable everyone because of her behavior, but then I say to her, sometimes some teachers, for them to push you to the next level, they need to be firm with you. If a teacher teaches you like a best friend, then you're not gonna learn. So they need to, because they know that this child can do better than what she is. So if a teacher pushes you to become who you want to become, and children don't like it, they don't like a teacher that gives them more work. No, they don't like it. And when we go for parents evening, I always speak to the teachers, and they always say, we give her more work and she doesn't like it. So, and then she says, this one gives me more work. I guess there's something fishy. She doesn't like me. Why is she giving me more work? So I have to explain that if somebody believes that you are capable of doing more, so they can push you, or they believe that you could actually be better than you are, so they can push you. Sometimes we can translate it as people are being mean, or people this. It's like if you come to me and say, Nomsa, I think there's a way that we can prove this by doing this, it will be up to me to say, okay, let's look into it. Or sometimes, I can react actually and say, who do you think you are, Carol Ann? So I can respond. Is the behavior is how I respond to you. So I can respond it to say, oh, this. But it depends. So I've learned to listen to some things that basically can help me to basically, if somebody comes with an idea, I treat that as experiment. Psychology is an experiment that you have to experiment things. And there are some things you look at it. I was reading about it yesterday. You can look at it as a survey. Like if you are doing a survey, what are the things that you want the outcome? Basically, it means you are doing the analytics. When you are doing a survey in psychology, that means you're doing analytics. Like science, that means you can go further and be a scientist, or you can be what is that, border control immigration officer, or whatever, clinical psychology and things like that. And but sometimes if I was being given a survey to actually write what I think about things, I wouldn't know why am I doing it and why am I doing this. So I'm learning that if I'm doing something, or if somebody comes to me with an idea, instead of dismissing the idea or agreeing to the idea, because some ideas are distraction, not every idea works. I have to do the analytics and check whether that idea could work, instead of me saying, oh no, we can't do that. So and it takes time. It takes time as well to work on your behavior. It becomes a habit. Once you work on your strength, your emotions, your strength, the triggers, that the things you become aware, the things that triggers your emotions, you become aware of it and brings them down and control them. It does help. It helps a lot.
Yeah,
It does help a lot.
it does. It certainly help a lot. And there's one other activity you can do, which mentioned before, to do with emotions and help to transform them and bring them down. If you've been triggered by something, just go, even though I've been triggered by this, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I've been triggered by this, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I've been triggered by this,
Even though I've been triggered by this,
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
I deeply, completely love and accept myself.
And then you just tap round the point. So it's the corner of the eye, this trigger, being triggered.
Okay, when you tap this to your eye,
Yeah,
you can feel something to your body.
just that corner there, yeah, by the eyebrow. Yeah, Because what you're tapping are the ends of the meridians, which are energy flows through the body. And this is called emotional freedom technique. So then it's the corner of the eye, this trigger, and then under the eye, this trigger, and then under the nose, this trigger, the chin, this trigger, and then the collarbone, this trigger, and then top of the head, this trigger. And you just name it and go around. And then just notice what's happened to the trigger.
Okay.
And maybe it's lost its impetus, you know? It's like your gun's ready, it's triggered, ready to go, and maybe by doing that, you don't fire the gun. And you don't, the trigger then diffuses. So again, that's something else worth looking up. As I say, it's called tapping. Emotional freedom technique.
Okay.
Is the true name, proper name for it, but we call it tapping because that's what you're doing, and that helps to diffuse the emotions as well. So as you can see, there are lots of techniques out there to help you to gain control of your emotions and take control of yourself, and so that you can respond rather than react inappropriately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And,
any words of encouragements before we leave, Carol Ann?
Okay, so there's something I read earlier, and it's another book I've found, and I've got. It's called "Change Your Brain, Change Your Life" by Daniel G. Arman, and in there he talks about squash the ants, capital ANTS, and it's the automatic negative thoughts. ANT, ants, So those automatic negative thoughts, those are just spring up. They're reactionary thoughts. Notice them and realize they're nothing more than an ant, an automatic negative thought, and squash it. So again, that's something else you could do in the moment. And again, it just helps. Again, it's that noticing. Just noticing. But I love that thought. I've never heard of ants before, and I read that and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, there's always a way to gain control of your emotions. Always a way. So that's what I'd like to leave you with, that thought.
Me, I just leave you for what Carol Ann has just said. Just leave you with the happiness is a lifestyle choice. Basically, how you control controlling your behavior, controlling yourself is a choice. So if you want happiness, it's a choice. You can give yourself that happiness. You can allow yourself to be happy without making yourself wrong. Like Carol Ann always say, don't make yourself wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we are here at Ngozi Talk Show Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. UK time. If you're watching this, please press some heart button and share with your loved ones. God bless you, everyone, and live with grace. And if you want to get in touch with our speakers, you can either go to our page or go to the website, Hope Springs Eternal Introduction Agency, and send me an email there. Then I'll connect you with whoever you want to connect with. Live with grace, everyone.